So we have another paid advertisement when it comes to Tony Khan, AEW President, founder and CEO of All Elite Wrestling. He was on Impact Wrestling once again this week on Access TV with the latest paid ad. Now we cover all of the paid ads that Tony Khan has done so far with Impact Wrestling. What I've really enjoyed about them in the past, and before we really get into the nitty-gritty of it, I will say this. What I've really enjoyed about them in the past is that it's been less about advertising AEW because they don't need to advertise on Access TV during Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling does 170, 180, 190,000 live viewers on Access TV. I know they get more viewership through their YouTube channel and social media and Twitch and all that kind of stuff, but AEW doesn't need to advertise on Impact Wrestling. They don't. What's been really the exciting thing about these Tony Khan paid advertisements throughout the whole time that he's been doing this, really since December, is the evolution of the Tony Khan heel character in Impact Wrestling. That's what's been great. He's really embraced this whole billionaire fanboy that's such a big fan of pro wrestling that he's founded his own company. He's calling himself the Forbidden Door. He's allowing Kenny Omega to appear on Impact Wrestling, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, in recent weeks, that's kind of changed. They've literally turned into advertisements to hype up what's going to happen on AEW Dynamite, and I've not really been a fan of that. Personally, for me, again, the great thing about it is the evolution of Tony Khan as a character. His promos improving every single week. The shots that he takes at Impact Wrestling. The cameos from other AEW wrestlers. All that kind of stuff has been really fun. And this week, maybe it's just because of everything that's been going on with AEW Revolution and time and all that kind of stuff. They didn't have time to do, I guess, a really creative Tony Khan promo. I don't know. But this week's one was literally just an advertisement for last night's edition of Dynamite, which was odd. It was very odd, but nevertheless, we'll go through it. Tony Khan, of course, didn't shy away from the elephant in the room. That was the exploding ring in his latest paid advertisement on Impact Wrestling. He addressed the exploding ring controversy. Tony Khan and Schiavone's latest ad aired on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday and saw Khan break down the big events from AEW Revolution, such as Christian Cage's debut, Sting and Darby Allin's street fight victory, and Matt Hardy's loss to Hangman Page. He also said that the show did, quote, big buy rate numbers. After all that, Khan continued the storyline explanation for the lackluster exploding ring in the Jon Moxley-Kenny Omega match, saying that Omega is, quote, terrible at building exploding rings. He further went on to say that Eddie Kingston is a great friend and Moxley won a friend back. He put over Kingston's attempt to save Moxley, noting that the ring may have not been enough to damage them, but that we will hear from Kingston on Dynamite as to why he did what he did. Now, obviously, that took place last night. When it comes to AEW, there was really so much that happened last night and so much news that was coming out of Dynamite last night, so don't worry, we've got you covered. I'll be doing videos on everything. Might take me a little while, but we're going to cover every single thing that happened on Dynamite last night. Then Schiavone broke down the card as to what happened on what was scheduled to happen for Dynamite as well. So that was really the paid ad. I think one of my biggest takeaways from it, aside from, as I mentioned before, that my preference for these Tony Khan paid advertisements was the storyline-driven nature of them. I preferred personally that we had a situation where Tony Khan was explaining maybe little plot holes or loopholes in story and logic when it comes to AEW stars appearing in Impact Wrestling. I preferred when he would say that, yes, Kenny Omega's on Impact Wrestling this week, but that's because I'm allowing it. I could file an injunction if I wanted to. I could prevent that. I enjoyed when he spoke about New Japan Pro Wrestling and saying that I'm the Forbidden Door. I'm the reason that people like Finjuice can appear on Impact Wrestling. I'm the reason that the Good Brothers can appear on AEW Dynamite. I'm the reason that Matt Hardy's in Impact Wrestling with Private Pie. I sent them over here. I needed someone that was a carny, a scoundrel to ruffle up Impact Wrestling. And I enjoyed it when Tony Khan appeared in the crowd and all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of feels like that they haven't really gone anywhere with that recently. When it came to Tony Khan's interference and being in the Impact Zone when he cost James Storm and Chris Sabin that opportunity at the Tag Team Championships a couple of months ago, it felt like, okay, this Tony Khan character not only is going to be this heel billionaire promotion, rival promotion owner, but he's also going to get involved physically on the show in terms of sitting in the crowd, being a character, Jerry Lynn being there as well, and they haven't really followed up on that, which to me has been slightly disappointing, only because I really enjoy it. I think Tony Khan's a fantastic promo. I think he's an excellent speaker. I know people will say, oh, he's just interjecting himself into storylines, but I think it works. And I think when these Impact paid ads or these AEW paid ads on Impact don't work, or when they just turn it into just that, an advertisement, because then it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense, because AEW doesn't need to advertise on Impact Wrestling. Oh, it's just those couple of thousand viewers that they got on Impact Wrestling advertising on Tuesday. I mean, why? I mean, I understand maybe it's a case of just purely contractual commitments. That's part of this working relationship. AEW have agreed that they're going to have this paid advertisement every single week. But I preferred it when there felt like there was a story being told here, and it felt like every single week we were seeing a new development of the Tony Khan character, and we were seeing a new development in the relationship between Impact Wrestling and AEW. And perhaps that will change in the next couple of weeks. Of course, we have the major announcement now that Kenny Omega is going to be facing Rich Swann or Moose at Rebellion, title versus title. So maybe now that that's officially been announced, maybe we'll get a bit more of the Tony Khan persona and the Tony Khan character on Impact Wrestling going forward. I certainly hope so. I've been a really big fan of that. But for me, the biggest takeaway, apart from the fact that I prefer it when they're storyline driven, the biggest takeaway with all of this, with this advertisement, was just how intertwined the AEW roster is with Impact Wrestling at this point. I mean, look at that AEW roster. They have got some major stars from Impact Wrestling's history. I mean, Tony Khan, I don't know if that's the way they set it up on purpose. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the way they tried to frame it. But they're going on about how successful this event is and how great the event was and what a huge buy rate. But look at the names they specifically mention here. This is what's, I think, really interesting. One of the biggest takeaways for me from this paid advertisement. So the first name they mentioned, Sting. Sting had a great performance, a great showing at AEW Revolution in the street fight. Of course, he teamed with the TNT champion Darby Allin, defeated Brian Cage and Ricky Starks of Team Taz. And in fairness, I was critical, and I still am. My opinion hasn't changed on that, of Sting's physical involvement in AEW. To me, it does seem a bit of a risk. Even if he was healthy at 62 years of age, it's a risk. But I'm not going to be one of those people that can't change their opinion or is just completely stuck in the mud, because frankly, Sting's performance was excellent. It was excellent at AEW Revolution on Sunday. I thought the street fight was fantastic. I thought the way it was shot was absolutely spectacular. The only thing I would have changed about that is I really didn't think it was necessary to have the commentators providing the commentary in it. I felt that as a cinematic spectacle, it kind of speaks for itself, and it doesn't need to have the voices of Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur and Taz speaking over it and watching it as if it's happening in real time. Because when you watch these cinematic spectacles, you know it's pre-taped, right? You know it's pre-taped. It's like when you go watch the Avengers films. You don't watch that and assume it's happening live. You know that it's a film, you know that it's pre-taped, and you know that there's been lots of different cuts and all this kind of stuff. And that's the same when it comes to a cinematic match. You know it's not happening in real time, so you shouldn't have any commentators speaking over it or providing play-by-play or colour commentary, but it just doesn't work. It kind of takes you out of the reality that is that cinematic match. So I didn't think that was necessary, but credit to Sting. I thought the match was fantastic. I thought he looked great. So that was interesting that they speak about Sting, arguably, one of the biggest names in Impact Wrestling history, certainly a multiple-time Impact Wrestling or TNA World Champion, former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, arguably the franchise player of Impact Wrestling during his time there. And it was always interesting whenever Sting was with Impact Wrestling that he could have gone to WWE during that period of time, and he didn't, for whatever reason, in the same way that he was so viciously loyal to WCW during the 1990s. He was the same way during the 2000s when it came to TNA Wrestling. Sting was fiercely loyal to Dixie Carr and Jeff Jarrett and Panda Energy and everyone involved there, which, looking back on it, was that the right decision? Probably not. I mean, it depends how you look at it, isn't it, I suppose? When it comes to Sting and WWE, the way that he was booked during his short time there, you could say, well, maybe he was right to be concerned. Maybe he was justified. But you look at... And look, it's difficult to say TNA wasn't a success during the 2000s. Did it achieve what it had the potential to? I don't think so. Was it successful for its time? Well, it was. It did good numbers on Spike TV. Could it have done better? Absolutely. And the fact that in the end, the money dried up and the money got out of control and all that kind of stuff goes, maybe there wasn't a success. I don't know. I would have maybe preferred to have seen Sting go to WWE in his prime, but we can't change that now. And he had some great moments in Impact Wrestling and TNA Wrestling over the years. So that was interesting. And then the next name they move on to, they talk about Scorpio Sky, which obviously I think he did have a couple of matches in Impact Wrestling, but it's hardly a legend. But the next name they move on to is Christian Cage. And the last time Christian Cage used the Christian Cage name, he was in Impact Wrestling. He was in TNA Wrestling. And arguably some of Christian's greatest moments in his singles career came when he was in Impact Wrestling. I know in WWE he became a World Heavyweight Champion on 2 occasions, kind of. I mean, the first reign was for like 2 days, and the second reign he won by disqualification and lost at the following pay-per-view. But Christian Cage, when he came to TNA Wrestling in the mid-2000s, that was really the indication that he came there to prove, I mean, he can say that he was burnt out and that's why he went to TNA Wrestling, but in reality, he went to TNA Wrestling in the mid-2000s because he was tired of being a mid-card guy. He'd realised that this glass ceiling, this imaginary glass ceiling in WWE, was never going to be smashed by him because he was never going to get the opportunity to smash it. And he thought, you know what, I've got to go somewhere else and I've got to prove to WWE and Vince McMahon and all of those names, I've got to prove that I'm worthy of being in the main event. And he went to TNA Wrestling and he did just that. He was a main eventer for the entirety of his run there. Multiple time, I mean, it was NWA World Heavyweight Champion there, wasn't it? But multiple time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, great matches and great feuds. I mean, I think back to the Christian Coalition, which was, what was that? Was that AJ Styles and Tomko with Christian? You know, just a great run, and it wasn't exactly a long run as well. I think from 2005 to 2008, something around that period of time. So about 3 years or so. It was only one contract, but he came there and he proved that he really was that level. He was that level. He was a main event level talent, and WWE for whatever reason just didn't realize that. Now, of course, the disappointing thing is that he leaves TNA Wrestling thinking that, look, I've proved I can be a main eventer. I'm going to go back to WWE and I'm going to be a main eventer. And it just never happened. It never happened. So when it comes to going to AEW, again, I don't see any reason why it's a bad thing for him because you're foolish if you don't look back on history and learn from the mistakes. And I'm not saying that any time he had WWE was a mistake, but he knows what level he has there. He knows in the eyes of the officials, of Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, whoever, he's going to be here, not here. And that's why he's gone to AEW. But certainly it was interesting because they mentioned Sting. They mentioned Christian Cage. I mean, we're talking about TNA legends at this point, really, TNA legends. And the names continue because the next name after that they talk about, who is it? It's Matt Hardy. And again, talk about a TNA legend, an Impact Wrestling legend. Matt Hardy, he had his match, of course, Sunday night against Hangman Page. It was the big money match. And again, it's fascinating to me. It's absolutely fascinating to me that the names they start rattling off, Sting, Christian Cage, Matt Hardy. I mean, talk about three names that, of course, in the course of Impact Wrestling's run, are pretty synonymous. And then what's the next name they mentioned? Ray Phoenix. Ray Phoenix is a former Impact Tag Team Champion. He was there with the Lucha Brothers. He was only in Impact Wrestling for a year or so. He started off with that whole Lucha Underground invasion of Impact Wrestling. But again, it's so curious, isn't it? It's so curious. And then another name they go to, Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston was in Impact Wrestling as part of the whole new LAX stable as well. And the match, of course, Ray Phoenix had last night was against Mac Jackson of the Young Bucks too. And I just find it fascinating. Now, obviously, there were other things that were announced, the Inner Circle, the War Room, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if that was intentional, or I don't know if it's just because at this point, AEW's roster is just filled with former Impact Wrestling talent. Whether it's Sting, whether it's Christian Cage, whether it's Ray Phoenix, whether it's whoever, Matt Hardy, they've got so many names that used to be under the Impact Wrestling umbrella. It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder because, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, frankly, I don't think it will. But if they wanted to do some kind of picking a side, invasion, Impact Wrestling versus AEW, that kind of stuff, they could do it if they wanted to. Because there are certainly enough names there that have appeared at Impact Wrestling in the past, or appeared for Impact Wrestling in the past, that their loyalties could be questioned. Their loyalties certainly could be questioned. And I think that's really interesting. I think it's also really interesting that they've got all of these names on the AEW roster that potentially at some point, maybe they come back. Why not? Can't they come back to Impact Wrestling? As long as this working relationship is going on, why not? Now, is Sting going to wrestle another match for Impact Wrestling? I highly doubt it. But an appearance on the show, a promo, a pre-tape, same with Christian Cage. Why not? I mean, when it comes to people that are more actively wrestling, like your Ray Phoenixes, and I think Matt Hardy absolutely could have one more match in Impact Wrestling too, it certainly opens a lot of doors. And Tony Khan likes to call himself the Forbidden Door, so why not? So that was really the promo, the paid advertisement from Tony Khan this week on Impact Wrestling. Again, not one of my favourites. which is disappointing. I prefer it where it's completely storyline driven and the Tony Khan character evolves, and that really wasn't it. It was more of the fallout of Revolution and actually a paid advertisement, which is a bit disappointing. But hopefully, as we get closer to Rebellion, we'll see something different, and we'll see the original Tony Khan come back to prominence on Impact Wrestling. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Tony Khan's paid advertisement this week on Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. It really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.